Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another episode of the strategy series. In today's video, we're talking about how to counter Gamma. Lots of you guys requested this video after the Philly breakdown, where at the Philly Regional, lots of Gamma made it into that top 16. I think it was the most topping deck, if I recall correctly, right? So we're gonna get into that in today's video. If you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a Dragon Ball Super video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways down in the description you can do so, as always. But today, guys, if you want to buy any of the cards we talk about in today's video, or any trading cards for that matter, feel free to use my link in the description to TCG Player. It really does help me out a lot. I really do appreciate it. Anyways, let's get right into this strategy series episode. Alright, we always start off talking about what the deck we want to counter does. So Gamma, it's a blue deck. The front side's pretty vanilla. Attack, draw a card, awaken with a 2-cost unison in play. But the back side of leader is where you get a lot of value. This has serious OG SS3 vibes, where you get 3 energy back defensively per turn, but you are locked into only using Android battle card effects during your opponent's turn, outside of Baby Hatch, because it only restricts you from 7 or less. But you can use whatever unison effects and whatever extra card effects you want during your opponent's turn, because those don't have tags like Android, for example. So Android battle cards and whatever blue extra cards and whatever blue unisons you're able to use, Gamma can get a lot of value out of those. We'll talk about some more of those in a bit. So as for the deck's aggressive game plan, it has a few routes, which makes Gamma really good. So you can go with a 1-drop 15k spam strategy, which is effective in certain matchups. So you have 4 copies of the Android 17 Rebellious Will. Simple, 1 energy, play it out of your energy. You have the energy fixing effect as well. And the barrier on this guy is actually super relevant because it gets around things like the Trunks blocker and the Trunks Vegeta matchup. It just prevents it from being removed easily. So it's just an attacker that can restand turn after turn and just apply pressure. And of course, you have the Android 18 counterpart to this, which is basically the same thing except for critical. Then you have the 20k dual attack beatdown from Android 17 and 18 limitless energy. This just applies more of that cheap pressure, only costs 2, so it gets them a lot of value for pretty cheap. And then of course they have their Cell boss monster, which comes out of the energy, wipes the board, punishes the opponent for counter attacking, so be mindful of that. And it also is a deflect dual attack 30k double striker the turn that it's played from the energy. So the deck has a lot of ways to go, either tall or low to the ground, which makes the deck very, very versatile and very good offensively. One thing I will say though, just from playing Gamma a lot recently myself, the deck is not very good at comboing offensively. It's not very good at shotgunning, because unless you play the draw 1 super combos, which just reduces your blue-green count quite a bit, you don't have the best super combos or combo power in general for shotgunning and putting on a lot of offensive pressure. But I mean, the stacks in these cards, depending on what game plan you're going for, can be enough to pressure. I mean, the 30k Cell, a lot of times when I'm playing Gamma and I attack with Cell, I think to myself, well, they pretty much have to negate this attack unless they want to dump most of their hand in combo. So that's how I think about it. But just keep in mind that sometimes you can abuse the fact that Gamma can't always combo offensively super well. Then we have some of Gamma's defensive powers. So one of which is Android 18, Let the Battle Begin. This card is so insanely good, but only certain decks can use it, right? Either Heroine or Android decks. Gamma happening to be a blue Android deck with a lot of unisons at its disposal, this card is incredibly powerful. Be very mindful of this card if you are playing cards in your deck that require you to invest 4-drops and 3-drops and such to the board, right? So decks that I'm thinking about, you want to be very careful about this, is going to be the U7 matchup. Honestly, one of the reasons I think U7 struggles against Gamma so much is because of Android 18, Let the Battle Begin. You pay 1 for your Frieza, you pay 1 for your Android 17, and they just go right to the bottom of the deck, and the Gamma deck now gets a blocker in the process, which is going to be really rough for U7. It can be tough for Trunks Vegeta as well. I mean, you activate your Evolve, you do draw your card off your leader and off your Evolve skill because it's a cost, but you lose that barrier blocker, goes to the bottom of your deck. That can be pretty rough to deal with sometimes. Then you have the Android 14 Floodgate Negate, basically saying if your opponent wants to attack for the rest of the turn, they have to put 2 cards from their hand to the bottom of the deck. We'll talk about answering this card in a bit. And then there's Dirty Burst. So like I mentioned before, the deck, or the leader rather, restricts you from using non-Android battle cards during the opponent's turn, but Dirty Burst is one of the best ways to get around that restriction, because this card is so good against your opponent's boss monsters. Going back to the U7 matchup, Ultra Mastery is basically null and void, because the leader giving you 3 energy back per turn makes Dirty Burst very easy to use. You've got other non-battle card effects that are very good defensively for Gamma, such as the Boo Unison, Beerus, Realm of the Gods Destroys. So you do have to be very mindful of their defense. Their defense can really cause some game states where it feels like the opponent almost can't do anything. But one of the things about Gamma is that it doesn't draw one of the biggest hands in the game, nor does it actually filter all that much unless you're using a lot of the Rebellious Will cards to kind of fix your energy and use that as a method of putting cards into your hand. So through that, you can kind of see what the Gamma deck has in its disposal, right? Like turn 2, for example, if I use one of the Rebellious Wills to put an Android 18, let the battle begin into my energy, or even an Android 14 into my energy, and the next turn I pick that up and charge some different cards, you'll know for a fact, okay, he's got Android 18, let the battle begin, let me play around that card. He's got Android 14, Inorganic Horror, let me play around that card, right? So you can use their energy as like a mental resource, which is a really good thing you're going to want to do in that matchup. But anyways, let's talk about cards that help answer the Gamma deck. So first thing I want to talk about is answering Android 14 and Organic Horror, because if you let them do this to you every single turn for 3 to 4 turns in a row, you're just never going to put damage through, right? And the nice thing about this format is a lot of Floodgate answers are found in main and side decks, which is very good in your odds to beat the Gamma deck. So red, for example, one of the main staples is Vegeta Resolve Renewed. That's going to be a great card for answering Android 14. And then you have yellow's sideboard, typically containing Tyrannical Blow, sometimes in the main board, but I've mostly seen it in sideboards. T-Blow stops the effect of Android 14 and also has an additional effect that is so good against the Gamma deck, because typically they're going to have the Boo Unison in play. So if you T-Blow the Android 14 and then negate the skills of their Boo Unison, you have an almost like free turn to do whatever you want, right? And you try to make sure you have enough energy, enough threats to really make that count, but it can be very, very good. We've talked about all the different answers and all the different colors to these cards. In blue, for example, if you're playing a blue mirror match, you can use Godsling Technique Trunks. If you're playing green, you can use Focus Breakthrough. And if you are playing black, you can use Super Kamehameha amongst other cards in all the colors. Kind of depends on the deck you're playing as well as the color you're playing, but there are so many answers to these types of cards in the meta. You just got to make sure you're well equipped with them. And I really like this type of format where, yes, these annoying cards like Android 14 exist, but we do have answers to them, and it just requires you to kind of play them, metagame a little bit. I do like that quite a bit. Then we have Dende New to the Job. So this is one that I find kind of interesting in this matchup. Dende is a card that I think is better in some decks versus other decks. But real quick, just going over what it does. 1 drop, play it, draw a card. It's got deflect, so they can't bounce it on play. And then activate main, pay 2, place a card in your drop area. If your opponent placed a card in their energy using a skill during this game, which Gamma does all the time, choose one of your opponent's energy and place it in the owner's drop area. So I think this is good in either slower decks for 1, or for 2, decks that can recur Dende. So that would typically be black decks playing things like Power Burst or other cards that allow you to reborn a black 1-drop. There are a few of those in the game, but this is actually put to me by my teammate Mike, which I kind of like the logic of. I mean, it makes sense, but I still think it's better in slow decks. But the way he put it to me is that you're essentially paying 3 energy to ramp an energy over Gamma, which is true and a funny point, to be honest, because you're sniping one of their energies, so they are set back a turn. But in so many cases, activating Dende costs you your entire turn. So do you want to spend your entire turn essentially ramping an energy? Maybe. That could be good. The cool thing about Dende, though, is that Gamma plays cards out of their energy. So if they're going up on their 4th turn, possibly the next turn, and you Dende them on your current turn, you can hit that cell out of their energy, and you just messed up their next turn if they don't have another cell in their hand or whatnot, right? You can just really hit vital cards out of their energy with Dende. But again, I think this is really going to benefit slower decks rather than faster decks. In an aggro deck, I probably would not play this card. Then we have Jiren Survival of the Fittest. So Gamma is known to play 1 copy of Android 17 Turning the Tide. They have very good synergy with it. They can charge it early and then just pick it back up later when it comes around to the time to actually use the card. So make sure if you're playing a slower deck, like a control deck, maybe you're playing the new Bulma deck, make sure you definitely have your Jiren Survival of the Fittest equipped in your sideboard. Again, aggressive decks, I don't think you need this card, because typically the game will end one way or the other before turn 7, and if you're playing an aggressive deck, so no need to have it there. But again, for your slower decks, your mid-rangey decks, your control decks, where you know you're going to go to turn 7 plus against Gamma, you may very well want to have Jiren in your sideboard. And of course, this also acts as a coverall against SS4 Vegeta, other blue decks that can possibly play Turning the Tide, right? So not a bad thing to have. Then we have Dark Power Black Mass Sand. Okay, so this card, I talk about it all the time, and it's generally not as good as people think it is against certain decks, because there's so much removal in the format right now. Every single deck can pretty much kill this card super easily, and that's still true in the Gamma matchup, but it's not too bad in the Gamma matchup, because the first 3 turns it can actually stifle their aggression, because turn 2 they might awaken with their Unison and want to play a Rebellious Will out of their energy. This card's going to stop that, and they're not going to have a really good way to remove it until about turn 3. The case of turn 3 for them is that if you swing into them and now they have all this extra energy open defensively, they can probably use Beerus from the Gods to just bottom deck this, or maybe they're coming up on their turn 4 and they just play Cell, which gets around this card and then just puts it at the bottom of the deck. The Limitless Energy 17-18 is also unaffected by this, but again, this can be kind of useful for stopping their Rebellious Will spams and stopping them from fixing their energy. That's not too bad. I would probably only really want this in more aggressive decks. I don't think it's going to really benefit you too much if you're playing a longer game deck. So yeah, put in BMS, stop their first couple turns. Maybe you have another engine or another deck strategy that can put a decent amount of pressure on them and really make the fact that BMS interrupted their early turns really count. But if your game's gonna go turn 6, turn 7, and you played BMS in the first 2 turns and they removed it on 3rd turn, not really gonna be as impactful, right? So I'd recommend BMS more so for aggressive decks. Then we have Sentiment and Protector of the People. So I always want to bring these up whenever a strategy has the ability to go with like a 15k spam. If you're playing blue, put in your Sentinel Beans. It's going to help you defend more easily against the Rebellious Will beatdown and the Limitless Energy beatdown. And then Protector of the People is just a more generic card you can play if you don't have access to a bean type of card, if you wanted to go that route. If you notice that, I don't know, you have a real easy time dealing with a 9-drop Cell, but you can't really deal with their 15k, 20k beatdown, these types of cards can definitely help you out. And then for the vice versa, if you're really struggling to beat that Cell 9-drop, if you just find that they play the Cell 9-drop and just kill you on the spot usually, these are some cards you can play in your respective colors to kind of stop that from happening. So in blue, we have Dirty Burst, which I mentioned earlier, Gamma is known to play. So in Gamma mirror matches, if you're playing SS4, if you're playing SS3 Reboot, Dirty Burst is a great option to stop that Cell 9-drop. Just know that this doesn't directly interact with Deflect, but basically what you need to know is Dirty Burst puts a restriction on the player that says they cannot attack with battle cards cost of 7 or more. So it doesn't matter that Cell has Deflect, the player cannot turn the card sideways to attack because of Dirty Burst. If you're playing green, Big Amor is a decent option to kind of stop the Cell from attacking you. The problem with Big Amor though is that it's very energy expensive. Yes, Dirty Burst costs 2, the same as Big Amor, but Dirty Burst also draws you a card, and it's also 2 energy in a color that manipulates its energy very, very well. Big Amor in green, not exactly the same story, but if you absolutely need it, you can side it. And then in yellow, we have Vegeta Unison of Fury, which has the famous -1. Your opponent can't attack with battle cards with energy cost greater than the current energy until the end of their next turn. Now, I want to mention here that Mutaito Skill of a Sage is not going to be very effective against the Cell 9-drop, and I just want to bring that up because I sided it in my top 16 Trunks Vegeta deck from the Philly event last weekend. And while it was kind of discovered that Mutaito works well against Ultra Mastery, because Ultra Mastery will do its board wipe before window 2 comes around, so you can play Mutaito in that window and it's safe to use its effect after that. The Cell 9-drop is an on-play auto, and they're going to be the turn player. Their auto is going to go first, right? So you counterplay with Mutaito, it doesn't matter if it's window 1 or 2. Their Cell auto is going to resolve before your Mutaito auto. So Cell is going to bottom deck Mutaito, and then Mutaito will not have the ability to sacrifice itself to rest the Cell. I know that's kind of complicated, but if you guys know what Mutaito does and know the interaction, I just wanted to explain it for you guys that might not exactly know the ruling there. But these are some cards, again, you can side for big boss monsters. In black, you have the Deborah counterplay. That can also work decently if you can manage to keep the energy up, but black's never been so huge on using a ton of counterplays against big boss monsters. Petrification can also be decent, stopping both attacks for 2 cards. That's not too bad. And then if you are in red, of course, like Videl counterplay can make the Cell way less threatening. Videl counterplay also being pretty good against the Limitless Energy 17-18. So you've got some options there. But anyways, guys, hope this video was helpful. As always, leave any comments if you guys have tips for beating Gamma. Lots of players would love to read those comments. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.